Welcome everybody, bienvenidos, buenas tardes to NLCUP's webinar on your network is your net worth. So I want to just take a few moments to welcome everybody to the session, and we will follow a similar structure as we did last time. If you were with us last time, where we will spend about 20-30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes just talking with our panelists today, which I will introduce with you shortly. And then we will go into breakout rooms, and I will put a link in the chat so that we will migrate from this platform to a Teams meeting, which that allows us to break up into different groups. So anyway, without further ado, thank you very much. My name is Edgar Hernandez, and I am a father, son, husband, brother, and a senior manager at CUNA Mutual Group in their multicultural business strategy area. So I have the pleasure today to be joined by two individuals, which I esteem quite a bit and are also part of NLCUP. Well, and let's start with Ruby Alvarez. So Ruby, she's the AVP of Community Development at GECU in El Paso, Texas. She has been with the credit union for 23 years. So, started when she was about 5. And she graduated from the University of Texas, El Paso. And also got her MBA. She literally started right out of high school, and she's had many positions, including operations as a branch manager, lending, community development. But she's also the current executive director of El Paso Affordable Housing, also vice president of Money Smart Week Board of Directors, and of course the member of NLCUP, one of the board members. So. She is out of El Paso, and she's married and has 2 kids. So welcome, Ruby, to the webinar.
Thank you so much.
The second person that we have here with us is you bet. The second person that we have here is Juan Fernandez. So Juan Fernandez Ceballos is the new and the first, I would say, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, however you want to use, Credit Union Association president and CEO of New Mexico, the Credit Union League. So thank you, Juan, for joining us. He's worked at different credit unions at an early age. He started as a teller while he was pursuing your college degree. I didn't know that. And he's worked in community development efforts in New York, and just trying to serve the unmet needs of communities, help their members, and achieve sustainable growth. He recently moved to New Mexico, so he's there now, and he was born from Puerto Rico. He's born in Puerto Rico, excuse me, and he's very passionate about helping cooperativas, reaching the Latino and immigrants and communities of color. So he got his BA in economics from Brighamton University and his MBA from Western Governors University. So Juan, bienvenido al programa de hoy.
Muchísimas gracias.
So we are going to start talking about something that is really, I think, near and dear to us. I think when we look at, how we got to where we are, oftentimes we like to think that, of course, it's part of our own efforts, right? And our own esfuerzo, like we say, we study hard, we work hard, and then things eventually turn out they turn out for the best. But oftentimes we forget, or maybe we don't. We acknowledge the people that helped us along the way. So today's session really is about mentors, but not only that, it's about mentors, allies, and sponsors. So I want to just take a little bit of a moment to kind of clarify how we are approaching or discussing those 3 different sort of roles, if you will. So when you think about a mentor, right? What do you think about? You can put it in the chat. Think about somebody that guides you, somebody that is a listening ear, somebody that you can bounce ideas off each other, somebody that perhaps can, when you're new to a company, maybe they can show you the ropes, guide you around what to do, what not to do. When you think of an ally, perhaps maybe it's somebody that will stand with you, right? Maybe it's somebody that will support you, and maybe we'll put in a good word for you here and there, right? As you're looking at opportunities. But it's really somebody, in this day and age where we're talking about the DEI movement, we talk a lot about allyship. And I think that's one of the things that is very important. But it's different than a mentor, right? I think we probably all would agree. And then the third piece is a sponsor or an advocate. And I think that's somebody that perhaps opens doors for you, right? Perhaps if there's an opportunity to say, hey, I think you'd be really good for that. And then kind of makes that more intentional, more proactive method. And no one is better than the other. I think there's just different rules. So as we talk about this theme with Juan and with Ruby, I just want to give us your sort of a story perhaps as to, some of the people that have helped you along your way. We'll start with Ruby. Share some of the things that, some of the individuals, some of the stories that really have stood out for you in your journey.
Thank you so much, Edgar. I think for me, first of all, I think very blessed with my journey here at GECU. I think it's been, people believing in you more than anything. But when you think about a mentor, growing up in the organization, you really don't realize how important that is until later on in your career. And so from my experience, I think it's really getting someone that believes in you. But from what I've seen now is the importance of you identifying someone that you look up to and that you have similar interests with. So I think a lot of times the error or the mistake that I made was assuming that someone was my mentor, but they never knew they were. So I think it's very important to understand that sometimes you think, well, that's my mentor, but that person never knows they are. It's really hard for them to give back and really help you with what a mentor is really supposed to do. So once I identified that, she is our CEO now. Crystal Long has been my mentor for so many years. And she was actually a vice president at the time that I worked under her. And at the time, I admired her so much because of her passion to help our members. And she hasn't lost that. I always tell her that she reminds me of Cinderella, right? She has courage and she's so kind. She is so strong. And although we're a large organization with over 400,000 members, she doesn't forget about that one member. And so I think that, when I identified that she was my mentor and I told her that, I think her passion to help me grow grew even further. So I think that's just something that has really stood out to me, is really knowing that there's a lot of great people out there, but this mentor really has to know that they're your mentor, and then also know that they need to spend a little bit more time with you, so that if you have those similar interests or that person you really look up to really talk to them and make that time so that they can give you that candid feedback, because it's not always going to be positive, right? It's going to be that, you know what, I've identified this, but have you noticed that you need to work on these things, and letting them know what your goals are as well. But I think that's just something that really stood out to me looking back and thinking about my journey here.
Thank you. Before we go to Juan, I want to have a follow-up question for you, Ruby. So when, as you said, how can you help a mentor be a better mentor? What kind of things did you do to make his or her, her job easier and exciting and fun? ¿Qué hiciste? ¿Qué te ayudó? Or what helped him? Yeah.
I think she said that she saw a lot of her and me when she was my age. So I think for you to identify that you have similar interests and for them to know what your goals are. So as a mentor, really digging into that mentee, right? To know, hey, what are their goals? What are their interests? And how can I help them get there? And if you identify maybe you're not that person, maybe there's someone else. She also put me on a committee here in El Paso with other leaders here in the city so that I got to work with other mentors. And so that you got to, I was able to experience CEOs from other organizations, not credit unions, not the financial industry. And so that I can see women in business, that's who she connected me with. So if as a mentor, you identify, you know what, I can guide this person with these things, but there's other people that I know that they should meet. I think that's another thing that you can do, is connect.
Muy bien, como las conexiones que están atrás de nosotros, ¿verdad? Uno va presentando. And I love what you said about, how they, she saw something in you. I see a lot of Juan in me, and I'm just not talking about the hair. But Juan, let's go to you, man. Let's talk a little bit about your story, about some of the people that have helped you along the way. What are some of the attributes? And are they mentors, allies, or sponsors? How do you?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Edgar. Thanks for the question. Thanks to NLCUP for having me. It's such a, such a pleasure to be here. So, my journey really began when I was about 13 years old, and I moved from Puerto Rico to upstate New York. And the reality was that it was really challenging when I first got to New York because I didn't speak English. I went to an all Anglo and all English high school, and I was the only person of color in the whole school. So it was easy for me to feel a little lost, feel like I didn't have anyone that I could really relate to. So it was basically sink or swim. So lo que hice fue que empecé a aprender a hablar inglés and assimilate. I really felt like that's kind of what I was doing. And I remember during that process, one of the things that I would do is I would lay in bed and I would literally be going over the words that people would make fun of me because of the accent. And I would try to get rid of my accent. And I remember a couple of years later, I really got to the point that I was looking back and I felt like I was betraying my culture and my raza. So I went through a period of identity crisis. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I really feel that happens to a lot of us when we get to credit unions, because depending on where you're located, when I was in upstate New York, I was often the only Spanish speaker, the only Latino in a credit union. And at the time, like you said in the intro, I was going to be doing teller jobs and doing loan officer jobs through college. I never really saw it as a career. I thought it was just a job that would get me through college. And it wasn't until I met some fantastic mentors, some fantastic, not just mentors, but role models that I really admired, that it really clicked for me. And by the way, if any of you if you have not watched the movie In the Heights, I highly recommend, go tonight, go this weekend, and go watch it. Watch it in the movies. Don't watch it at home. It's worth it to watch it at the theater. And there's one particular character in that movie, and it's Nina. She was the first one to go to college in her family, and she went to Stanford. And she really, really felt like a fish out of water because, people were making fun of her. People were, she went through a lot. Y la realidad fue that she needed to realize that she needed to not just be at the table, but she needed to create her own table. And for me personally, it wasn't until I met people like Victor Coro and Pablo de Filippi pretty early in my career that I saw that I'm like, this can be not just a job, but this could be a really fulfilling career. And I've learned so much from people like them. And then of course, I've made other mentors and allies and advocates along the way that have made it possible for me to get here. But I really believe that if it wasn't for those people that along the way counseled me, that gave me advice that I was able to learn from, and that I also could look up to and see myself in, I wouldn't be here today. And to the point of the difference between mentorship, ally, and supporter, I think it's really important as you meet people to make that distinction, because there are people that I speak to about certain topics that, and I know they're experts in that. I know that they're going to help, lift me up. There are other people that I talked about different topics. So really getting to know them as much as they're getting to know you is really, really important. And mentorship, by the way, is a two-way street. I really feel like anytime I've had a relationship with a mentor, it's been someone that the learning goes both ways, and it's been so enriching. So all that to say that I hope everyone that's joining us really looks for really good mentors that are good fits for them and for their situation, people that are going to lift them up, because not just anyone can be anyone's mentor. It's really, in my opinion, you have to have great trust and you have to really click. But without great mentors, it's really hard, in my opinion, to get places.
That was great said. I think there's some nice comments from both of you, Ruby and Juan, on the chat here about that. I like what you said about, when you're not being at a table, but then creating your own table. I think that's interesting, right? Because oftentimes we feel confined. And, part of the reason I think why NLCUP is around is because we created our own table, right? It's just a table where we can exchange ideas in this platform. And maybe one day we get a chance to all mingle again, hopefully soon. And but as I think about the power of just that human connections, right? We are, Latin people, Hispanic, Chicano, we're very warm. We like the hugs and embrace, and there's something that has been lost, to be honest, right, in this. But it doesn't mean that we cannot make those connections. And I think, the story also about in the Heights, I think that's just really interesting because you do get a little bit of that cognitive dissonance. Who am I? In which space do I live in? And, I myself, I'm an immigrant. When I came to this country, I didn't know how to speak English. I mean, I can barely speak English now, and I just made a little progress. But, I look at, how I came to school at UW-Madison. Had it not been for a professor that took me under his wing, I would probably not have finished, because I said, I can't afford it, number one. And number two, I don't think it's worth it, to be honest. And he said, Edgar, stay. I will find an assistantship for you. And I graduated and I had zero debt. So I'm, immensely thankful to him, because he was not Hispanic. He was a white male professor in his probably 50s. And he just saw something in me that, like you said, he just empathized. So thank you very much. And keep the comments coming. I am going to just take a pause here, because I am going to put the link in another 5 to 10 minutes or so. We're going to move into a space, into a meetings. We'll break up into different groups, and then we'll talk about the same topics, and you can exchange your story. So if you just give me just a second, I'm going to post it right here, so that you can all, what you can do is you can open up your a different browser perhaps, and then just type in, click on this, so that when I give you the signal, you can just click on that link that I just put there, and it will take us there. But not yet. Don't do it yet. Otherwise, you're going to be there by yourself, and there will be no networking happening unless you talk to yourself. Let's talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts. I mean, oftentimes, we may be in a position to then mentor somebody else, right? And we pay it forward. What are some of the things, if we are, we've had some experience, some years under our belt, what can we do then perhaps as mentors to help others? What are the things that we probably shouldn't do or shouldn't assume? Ruby, do you want to take a first crack at it?
I think as now we're shifting to mentors, and as if we're mentors to someone, I think that it's having that open communication and really understanding what is it that this person is aspiring to do. A lot of times also not assuming that if you have them as an employee in your credit union and they're aspiring to be in your role or in a supervisory role, sometimes we tend to assume that's what they're going to do, and all of a sudden that's not what their aspirations are. So I think really understanding what their aspirations are and then making time. I think that's something that if we don't schedule it, it doesn't happen sometimes. And so that's something that I'm very big on, is we oversee people or people that you decide to mentor, is making that time and scheduling it. I know many of us are very, very busy with our schedules, but I think that that's very important to making time. And now shifting, I still want to stick to people that have mentored me and the importance of that. But the other thing is being open to meeting new people. I think that that's how you build your network, is that you talk to different people and that you ask questions. When you're with your mentor, you're with someone at an event, make sure you're open to meeting other people and talking about some of the things that you're working on, because I think that we don't want to just close ourselves off to that one mentor, that one ally, that one sponsor. I think there's a lot of people that can contribute to your success and to the things that you're working on. So I think just opening up your network and meeting new people and letting them in your circle.
Right. You made a good point about time. It takes time. I mean, it really to be a top-notch, I think, mentor or ally or sponsor, you've got to invest the time both ways, right? Both ways. Juan, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I'm going to get to a question that was asked by one of our attendees, but your perspective on, the do's and don'ts, assumptions about being a mentor.
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd advise people on this call, if you're starting in your career, is it's super important to get involved. The credit union movement is such an amazing place that I think is so fulfilling because we have such an amazing mission and we're changing so many lives. And in order for you to advance in your career, my number one advice is get involved. Get involved with the league, get involved with NLCUP, get involved with your chapter meetings, get involved. Super, super important, because through that involvement, it's where you will most likely meet some of the people that will become the best mentors for you. Get involved in the community too, beyond the credit union. Volunteer to do things in the community through the credit union, because it's super important. What I would say as far as don'ts is don't push it. It has to be a natural fit. Not, like I said earlier, not everyone is everyone's fit for an ally or a mentor. I mean, it has to be a really natural fit for both parties, and you will know that when you find those people that really are a great fit and that lift you up as a person. So those are probably the two biggest do's and don'ts that I would say.
Okay. And this is great, because it talks about chemistry, right? It's just like when you have a best friend or you're dating or you have it's like trying to find that connection. And it's much more, it flourishes better, it grows better when there's that, it's not forced, it's just very natural. So thank you for pointing that out, Juan. We have a question. I'm going to see if either you can take it, but it says, I'm the only Hispanic Latino in my entire marketing team, around 20 to 25. And a majority of people in my department have had very little interaction with a Hispanic. What can be done to champion a sense of comfort to the team so they can understand the culture? And what can I do so they are an ally? I was like, this person's a little bit by themselves. So what can they do to champion the sense of comfort so they can understand, the team can understand culture?
Ruby, do you want to take that or do you want me to take it first?
Have a party, Don. Invite them to. I think more than anything, if you explain your culture a little bit, a lot of times people don't understand. So it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take time. But maybe sharing some of the things that you do or some of the things that you do with your family that they can understand a little bit better, or they read and see a lot, but maybe not understand our culture. And so little by little, they'll start understanding you, and don't try to be someone that you're not, don't try to just fit in. I think understanding and explaining little by little, they'll start understanding what your likes are, what your culture is, what you like to celebrate. So I think just really educating your team and knowing that maybe sometimes they don't like to ask questions, but they want to know. So I think just educating them.
Yeah, one of the things I'll say before you add is also one of the things I do, and this is just universal, is being curious about them will make them curious about you. You'd hope so, right? As you listen to them, they want to just reciprocate. People are natural, like, how are you? People, you say, I'm fine. And then what do they say? How are you doing? And so I think that just keeping that alive. Well, what were you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say, I mean, I really agree with what you guys have said. I mean, I've been in that situation. In fact, I was in that situation just now before coming to New Mexico. I spent 10 months at a credit union in Spokane, Washington. And I was the only Latino at the credit union. Actually, I was one of two people, but the only one in my department, the only one in my whole division, and the only one in leadership. And what I'll tell you is that I think when I said earlier that, it's important to not just be at their table, but create your table. I feel like for a long time when I first came to the country and I learned English, etc., like I was almost a different person at work than I was at home. Like I didn't bring my whole self to work. And I think threading that line was something that I learned. And that's what I meant earlier by creating my own table, still being at their table, but also having my own table. And I think that's when I found my career the most fulfilling, because I was bringing myself to work, my whole self to work, my ideas to work. And if you are at a great credit union, which I hope you are, I'm sure you are, they're going to value that, because they're going to value that diverse point of view at the table. They're going to, there's all kinds of research that shows that diverse teams are stronger, they make better decisions. And the other thing I'll mention is, depending on where you are located, where your credit union is located, one thing you may want to do is start talking about the value of reaching the Latino community. There's a great business case to be made to do that. And if the credit union chooses to do that, by natural progression, you're going to have to become more diverse. You're going to have to bring more Latinos to your team. So that might be a great first step, is to help them understand, like, look, we are a community that's very loyal, and there's an amazing opportunity for the credit union to grow by helping our community.
Absolutely. You mentioned this a second time, and I'm glad you did, because I was going to make a point of it. I think, you heard the word code switching, right? Code switching, just going to different contexts. And I think people that, especially immigrants that know a different language, I mean, you automatically grew up with that code switching through the language switching, right? You go in an environment where all of a sudden you're like, oh, ¿cómo se dice? Híjole, no sé qué pasa aquí. Y si digo, I'm saying the wrong thing. And you're very much aware as to what comes out of your mouth. Or maybe you're not even aware what comes out of your mouth, because you understand what you're saying. Like it happened to me when I was very young. But I think that it's important, again, to reach out, to elevate the importance, raise curiosity, and food. Like, bring some food. People like food and music. Expose the things that people really like the universal language. Just as many languages, right? The food, music. So I want to move on, and I do want to ask another question to have. But before we get to that, we talked a little bit about connecting and going out there. What about this idea that there's people that are a little bit more comfortable because maybe they're extroverts, right? They're more comfortable reaching out, talking to people. What about the people that are not? They're introverts, right? That they just feel more comfortable in their own space. What kind of advice would you give them? Ruby?
I think for us that are extroverts, right, I think the first thing is, don't assume it's easy, right? I think that for a lot of people, it's not as easy to go up to someone and start talking to them. But I think Juan talked about getting involved. So whether you get involved with a large group first, and so you're not going to speak right away, don't stay away from events or anything that will help you create a network. So maybe joining larger groups at first, so you don't have to be the one that speaks, because I know naturally that's not easy for someone. And then little by little, find interest and just ask questions. So if you ask a question, then a conversation starts. Okay. And so that's something that I really, really encourage. The other thing is, make a rule whenever we start with conferences again or events. Don't go to a conference and go straight to your room. I think that is a wasted time for you to do that, because that is the time that you can build your network. There's so many friends and people that I have now because of these events and people that you meet. So I know it's not as easy for someone, but try to set a goal that you don't have dinner by yourself.
Oye, y si te vas a tu cuarto es para cambiarte, para arreglarte y para salir a la fiesta.
Exactly. So take advantage of these things, because it's not just your day 8 to 5 conference. I think most of the networking happens afterwards. Sure. So I think that, I know it's not as easy for everyone, but push yourself to do that a little bit, because it is so worth it.
Okay. Muy bien. Juan, ¿qué puedes decir acerca de esto?
So what I would add is, I wasn't always an extrovert. It's funny, because I was recently in a podcast and they asked me, what was Juan like when you were in high school? And the funny thing is, I was a very quiet, shy person. Mm-hmm. And I really personally worked on it. I mean, it wasn't easy. I've taken a couple of public speaking classes that really pushed me out of my comfort zone. all that said, not everyone's going to do that. I understand that. And there are some things like what Ruby just, some of the things that Ruby just spoke about. But the other thing is, now we live in a world that there's technology. So if it's a little easier, it might be a good first step for if you find someone that you really admire, that you think could be a great mentor, that you could really learn from. You could have a one-on-one communication online with that person. LinkedIn is an amazing place where you could connect with people, you could relate with them, then you can maybe have emails or phone calls, and it's one-on-one. Because I know even when I was much more introverted than now, it was easier for me to have one-on-one conversations with people than it was for me to go into a room and do things with a large setting. And volunteering is often something that you do that you're not really necessarily talking a lot about, but it's still a place where you could actually make great connections one-on-one with people. And just remember that not every role model in credit unions is going to be an extroverted person. So once again, not every mentor is for everyone. You finding someone that's going to fit into your style is really, really important. Someone that you're going to feel comfortable with, that you're going to learn from, and that are going to help you overcome some of the obstacles that you might be facing. I mean, and I'll tell you, like right now, I just started a new job this month, and not to belabor the point, but I've had such great advice from amazing people that I've known for a long time, that I've been able to pick up the phone and call and say, look, I'm having this challenge. How can you face that? And I mean, CUNA has CUNA councils where you could do that with people that do jobs that are similar to yours. Once again, that's the importance of the network, because it's going to help you do more and get farther.
Muy bien. Gracias, Juan. Eso es muy bueno, muy interesante. Quiero un poco cerrar este capítulo porque quiero dar tiempo para movernos de una plataforma a otra. We'll move from one platform to another. Before I do that, though, it's interesting because it is important to know personality types. And I think we talk about Myers-Briggs or Enneagrams and all that stuff. And there's a whole plethora of combinations and permutations. Even if you're an extrovert, maybe you're better one-on-one, right, than one-to-many. And I'm like you, Juan, that I was very shy when I was younger, and just came out of my little shell. And it was, that getting out of my comfort zone that I think helped me be who I am today. The second thing is also about LinkedIn, right? I mean, that's the premier, professional social media platform, and how many connections do you have there? And also how many connections outside of your traditional network. Think about diversification, right? If all the folks that you know are just in one region or just one type of people, you're not diversifying your network. And there's some great studies done about just network theory. And if you were to map out your current LinkedIn connections, you would understand there's somebody here that is responsible for connecting you with a whole new world. And there's somebody over here too. And those are the people that are usually really good connectors. So I invite you to take a look at your LinkedIn network, find out how many people. Maybe you have a goal of adding a couple people a month or a week or whatever you want, because that's going to help you grow. And I hope that you connect with every single person that is in this webinar or in the breakout sessions afterwards. So I'm unfortunately, I can't take another question that we had from the audience, but I want to move us to the breakout room. So I'm going to put in the link again. All right, we're going to go there. We'll meet you there. I will address the anonymous person. Well, they're anonymous, so I can't tell who they are, about some experiences as being minorities and having different background and culture. How did they regain the confidence and voice to be able to share culture and perspectives in a professional setting? And this is, I would say that this is where you can lean on networks like NLCUP, right? You can pick their brains. And how did you do it? How did you feel with that struggle? Because chances are one of us will have gone through a very similar experience as you have, right? So, all right, I'm going to type it one more time. There it is. So what I want you to do is, I want you to go ahead and click on that, and or open a browser. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and then I'm going to close this session, and I'm going to join there. All right. So 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. See y'all in a bit.